ARC Chairperson Training, Module 4, Eligibility. The graphic on this slide details the special education cycle. It's a logic model that sequences key events in identifying, evaluating, and supporting students with disabilities. To learn more about special education eligibility, additional resources can be accessed through links embedded within this PowerPoint. This slide contains a link to an article that takes an in-depth look at what is commonly referred to as the three-pronged test for eligibility. It's included as a reference. The next several slides will take a close look at the three prongs to special education eligibility. The Division of Learning Services issued a policy letter in 2012. The policy letter was developed based on findings from on-site monitoring visits and desk audits conducted during the 2009-2010 school year. It was evident districts were interpreting the requirements for evaluation and eligibility in different manners. The intent of the letter was to clarify some of those requirements, such as research-based interventions, observations, and triangulation of data. A state agency has the right to interpret the state regulations. To try to make sure this interpretation received throughout the state, the letter and webinar were developed. The webinar was provided shortly after distribution of the policy letter, and it's still available on the Kentucky Department of Education's website. Appropriate instruction and to determine eligibility. The Kentucky regulations indicate, upon analysis of intervention and assessment data, the ARC shall determine whether the child is a child with a disability. Appropriately completed referral, analyses of data, evaluation planning, and ARC decision-making at the referral process should have set the stage for the rest of the due process. Now that you are at the eligibility determination stage, regulations state that upon analysis of intervention and assessment data, the ARC shall determine whether the child is a child with a disability. When determining eligibility for specially designed instruction and related services, the ARC must include someone knowledgeable about the evaluation procedures and results. The ARC will use the full and individual evaluation results to determine if the child has a disability. The ARC will use the evaluation results to determine if the disability adversely affects, that is, has a negative impact on, the educational performance of the child to the extent that the child needs specially designed instruction and related services in order to receive a free, appropriate public education. If the ARC, using the results of the evaluation, decides the child is not eligible for specially designed instruction and related services, the parent is given a written explanation of the decision. If the ARC decides the child is eligible for specially designed instruction and related services, the parent also receives a written explanation, and the ARC develops a written individual education program, commonly referred to as an IEP, for the child. The foundation of special education is based on data, documentation, and the analysis of each. The Admissions and Release Committee reviews all data. The state is currently requiring a minimum of 2 observations for all disability categories. It's important to note that the evaluation information needs to align with the evaluation planning form previously completed by the ARC. Data reviewed by the ARC may include the multidisciplinary evaluation report, other evaluation reports and diagnostic instruments, behavior observations, the social developmental history, adaptive behavior assessments, rating scales, and classroom-based observations. Parent input. Regulations indicate the ARC must review and discuss evaluation and information brought by the parent or parents or completed by the parent or parents. You can find additional information in the record review document. In making eligibility determinations, a local education agency shall draw upon information from a variety of sources. Regulations indicate that we should review all student assessment results and document the discussion of the analysis. Kentucky administrative regulations also note that a local education agency shall ensure that information obtained from these sources as appropriate for each student is documented and carefully considered. Remember, decisions must be documented. If it's not documented, then it didn't happen. The other piece of this, the careful consideration, must be detailed in the conference minutes. IDEA eligibility cannot stand on one piece of evidence. Information regarding student eligibility must be triangulated. The purpose of triangulation of data. Triangulation of data increases both the credibility and validity of results. It helps us, for example, substantiate the existence of a disability. Regulations are clear that a single procedure shall not be used as the sole criterion for determining whether a child is a child with a disability and for determining an appropriate educational program for the child. Triangulation of data occurs when data is gathered from multiple evaluators at different times and in varied settings. When different methods of evaluations take place in varied settings by multiple evaluators and at different times, then lead to the same results, an ARC can be confident in its eligibility determination. When considering all disabilities, these three questions must be addressed. 1. Is there an adverse effect on educational performance? 2. Is it due to the lack of reading or math instruction? And 3. Is it due to limited English proficiency? Regulations state a child with a disability is defined as a child who, after appropriate evaluation, meets the criteria for one of the 13 disability categories indicated under Kentucky administrative regulations. If the child has met all the criteria for one of the 13 eligibility categories, then the Admissions Release Committee completes the decision at the bottom of all eligible forms. The child has a disability which adversely affects educational performance and is eligible for specially designed instruction and related services. The student does not have a disability and is not eligible for specially designed instruction and related services. In Kentucky, we recognize 14 categories of disability. 14 because Kentucky breaks apart mental or cognitive disabilities into mild and functional mental disabilities. The other categories of disability include autism, deaf-blindness, developmental delay, emotional behavior disability, hearing impairment, multiple disabilities, orthopedic impairment, other health impairment, specific learning disability, speech or language impairment, traumatic brain injury, and visual impairment. Looking over this list of disabilities, which disabilities must a student have below average cognitive ability or a below average intellectual quotient? If you answered mild mental disability or functional mental disability, you would be correct. Which category might attention deficit hyperactivity disorder fall under? If you answered other health impairment, you would be correct. Adverse effect. Kentucky regulations define adverse effect as progress of the child is impeded by the disability to the extent that the educational performance is significantly and consistently below the level of similar age peers. Educational performance reflects the total involvement of a child in the school environment. Thus, it includes social and emotional development, communication skills, and participation in classroom activities, as well as academic performance. To understand significant, it's important to get comparison student performance data. When we compare student performance to peers, what are the educational performance expectations of the non-disabled peers? How is the student performing in comparison? Consistently means across settings and time. Significantly, although not defined in regulations, should have some sort of gap data analysis. This is available through the RTI process. The RTI process should reveal that a student is performing significantly below same age peers. The important concepts within the definition of adverse effect are progress is impeded by the disability, and then educational performance is below similar age peers, both significantly, your gap data, and consistently, your rate of growth data. Questions you may consider asking are, is there an adverse effect in the basic skill or skills that we are evaluating? Is the child performing significantly below age and grade norms? According to Jana Osman, in the article Disability is Not Eligibility, published in 2005, significantly and consistently means your child is performing among the lowest 15% of students his or her age. This assumes using 3 different measures over a 6-month period. Here are some examples of different measures: standardized test results, report cards, curriculum-based measures, criterion reference tests, work samples, state assessments, behavior observations, and checklists. This list shared is not exhaustive. Affected areas may include the child's social interaction and behavior, their emotional development, academic and vocational performance, and participation in classroom activities and discussions. Behavior observations can be conducted to document the adverse effect in these areas. Finally, is there a need for special education? The ARC must discuss and answer this question. Is there a need for special education? This question is answered with another question. What must be provided that is not made available to all students? When the ARC answer leads them in determining eligibility and developing specially designed instruction, which is part of the IEP development process, confidence can be had that this is a child with a disability under Kentucky special education regulation. If the ARC cannot answer this question, then it moves on to another question. Can an accommodation suffice? To review, there are 3 prongs to special education eligibility. First, the presence of a verified disability. Second, a documentation of adverse effect. And third, that the disability requires specially designed instruction or related supports. This slide contains links to resources available on the Kentucky Department of Education website. It includes policy letters and guidance documents, as well as Q&As that were developed by the Kentucky Department of Education. Also, you may find the Compliance Record Review document that's updated annually. This concludes the module.